The prenup sat on our kitchen table like a loaded weapon, all 17 pages of legal jargon that would change everything between us. Vanna pushed it toward me with manicured fingers, her engagement ring catching the overhead light. "It's just protection, Trent," she said, not meeting my eyes. "My parents insisted." I picked up the document, scanning the clauses with the same attention I'd give a computer virus. Future assets, separate property, ironclad divisions of everything we'd never even acquired yet. The thing read like a divorce decree written before the wedding. Protection from what exactly? I asked, setting down my coffee. My devastating IT consultant salary? She finally looked at me then, her lawyer's mask slipping just enough to show irritation. "Don't be dramatic. It's standard procedure for anyone with substantial family assets." Substantial family assets. That was Vanna speak for, "My trust fund makes your paycheck look pathetic." Which it did, honestly. Her father owned half the commercial real estate in town, and her mother's family had been lawyers since before the Civil War. Me? I fixed computer networks and lived in a rental apartment above Frank's bar. "Look at Clause 15, her lawyer had explained during our meeting. "Any assets acquired individually during the marriage remain separate property. Future inheritance, lottery winnings, business ventures, everything stays with whoever earned it." I'd nodded along, playing the part of the grateful blue-collar guy who couldn't believe his luck. Inside, though, I was taking notes. Mental notes about every word, every loophole, every assumption they were making about stupid old Trent. "Fine," I said, reaching for the pen. "But I want to add something." Vanna's eyebrows shot up. "Add what?" "A clause about disclosure. If either party conceals assets or engages in financial deception, the prenup becomes void." Her lawyer shifted in his chair. "That's unusual. So is asking someone to sign away rights to money they haven't even made yet." I smiled at both of them. Fair is fair. 3 years later, I was sitting in that same kitchen, staring at a lottery ticket worth $5 million. The irony wasn't lost on me. Vanna was at her office, probably billing some poor client $300 an hour while I'd just won more money than she'd see in a decade. I pulled out my phone and called my accountant. "Jerry, it's Trent Ardell. I need you to set up some trusts, immediately." "Trusts? What's the occasion?" "Let's just say I'm about to test the limits of a very carefully worded legal document." By the time Vanna came home that evening, the money was locked away tighter than Fort Knox. Separate trusts, different banks, all perfectly legal under the terms she'd insisted on. Future assets acquired individually, just like she'd wanted. "You seem happy," she said, dropping her briefcase by the door. "Just had a good day." I held up the ticket. "Won a little something?" She glanced at it dismissively. "How much? $20? $5 million. The color drained from her face. Then came the calculations. I could practically see her lawyer brain spinning through the possibilities. Community property, shared assets, her rightful half. "We need to call my attorney," she said finally. "Already did. Called mine too." I pulled out a folder thick with legal documents. "Turns out that prenup you insisted on is pretty specific about future assets." Her hand shook as she reached for the papers. I watched her read, watched her realize what her own signature had done. Every protection she'd built to keep me away from her money now kept her away from mine. "This can't be legal," she whispered. "Your lawyer wrote it. Your parents insisted on it. You signed it." I shrugged. "Ironclad, I think you called it." The next morning, she brought reinforcements. Her attorney, a sharp-dressed man named Peterson, who'd never liked me, sat across from me with murder in his eyes. "Mr. Ardell, surely you understand that marriage is a partnership." "I understand that your client wanted separate assets," I interrupted. "I'm just giving her what she asked for." "The spirit of the agreement—" "The spirit?" I laughed. "The spirit was protecting Vanna's family money from her blue-collar husband. Mission accomplished. Peterson tried everything: community property laws, good faith arguments, even emotional appeals about the sanctity of marriage. But the document was bulletproof. Vanna had been so worried about protecting her inheritance that she'd created an impenetrable wall around all future assets. "There has to be something," Vanna said, her voice cracking. "Some loophole, some way to challenge this." "There is," Peterson admitted reluctantly. "If you could prove the prenup was signed under duress, or if there was financial deception involved." I met Vanna's eyes across the table. "Any financial deception you want to discuss, honey?" She looked away quickly, too quickly. That night, she locked herself in her study, making phone calls in hushed tones. I could hear fragments through the door: community assets, legal challenge, that bastard. I was in the garage organizing my tools when I found it, a gym membership card that definitely wasn't mine, tucked behind my workbench. Elite Fitness Club, owned by some guy named Eliot Garrison. The card was warm, like it had been in someone's pocket recently. I turned the card over in my hands, thinking about those late-night phone calls, the sudden interest in working out that had started 6 months ago. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they made was about to make my lottery win look like pocket change. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Frank's bar smelled like stale beer and broken dreams, which made it perfect for the conversation I needed to have. My oldest friend stood behind the scarred wooden counter, polishing glasses with the methodical precision of a man who'd been doing it for 20 years. "You look like someone stole your lunch money," Frank said, sliding a whiskey across to me. I pulled out the gym membership card and placed it on the bar. "Found this in my garage." Frank picked it up, squinting at the name. "Eliot Garrison. Isn't he that pretty boy who owns the fancy fitness place on Maple Street?" "That's the one." "And this was in your garage because my wife's been entertaining visitors while I'm at work." Frank set down his glass with more force than necessary. "You sure about this, Trent?" "Sure enough." I took a sip of whiskey, feeling it burn away the last of my illusions about marriage. Question is, what do I do about it? Most guys would confront the wife, throw out the boyfriend, file for divorce. Most guys didn't just win $5 million with a prenup that protects them from gold-digging spouses. Frank grinned. "This is going to be interesting." Over the next week, I became a student of surveillance, not the creepy stalker kind, just the careful observation of someone gathering evidence. I started working from home more often, noting when Vanna left for client meetings that lasted 3 hours. I paid attention to her phone habits, the way she'd step outside to take certain calls. The breakthrough came on Thursday. Vanna announced she was working late, some big case that required overtime. I waited an hour, then drove to her law firm. Her car wasn't in the parking lot. Elite Fitness Club was only 10 minutes away. I parked across the street and waited. At 8:30, Vanna's BMW pulled into the lot. She sat in the car for a few minutes, checking her makeup in the mirror before walking to the entrance. She had a key. 45 minutes later, she emerged with a man I recognized from local newspaper photos. Eliot Garrison, 30-something, the kind of guy who probably used more hair product than most women. They stood close together by her car, his hand on her waist, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. I took pictures. Lots of pictures. The next morning, Vanna was unusually cheerful at breakfast. "I think I found a way to challenge the prenup," she announced. "Really?" "Peterson thinks we can argue that lottery winnings should be considered community property, especially since we bought the ticket with shared household funds." I nodded thoughtfully. "That's interesting. What does he think our chances are?" "Good. Really good." She leaned across the table, putting her hand over mine. "We're partners, Trent. We should share everything." Partners. The word tasted like ashes in my mouth. "You're right," I said. Partners should be honest with each other. Something flickered in her eyes. Of course. So is there anything you want to tell me? Anything at all? She held my gaze for a long moment, then shook her head. Nothing I can think of. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos from the night before. Her face went through a fascinating series of expressions: surprise, panic, calculation, and finally, defiance. "It's not what it looks like," she said. "It looks like my wife has a key to another man's business and they're very comfortable with each other's personal space. Eliot is a client. I'm handling some legal issues for his gym." "What kind of legal issues require after-hours meetings and intimate physical contact?" She stood up abruptly. "I don't have to explain myself to you." "Actually, you do. Remember that clause I added to the prenup? The one about financial deception and concealed assets?" Her face went white. "This isn't about assets? Isn't it? You're planning to challenge our prenup based on shared household funds, but you've been sharing a lot more than funds with your client." I stood up too, enjoying the moment more than I probably should have. "Peterson might want to know about this before he files any paperwork." "You wouldn't. Try me." That afternoon, Vanna's strategy shifted. Instead of legal challenges, she went for character assassination. By evening, half our mutual friends had received carefully crafted messages about my gambling problem and controlling behavior. She painted herself as the victim of an abusive husband who'd hidden his lottery addiction and was now using his winnings to manipulate her. The messages were masterful, just enough truth mixed with fiction to be believable. Yes, I'd won the lottery. Yes, I was keeping the money separate. But the reasons she gave were pure fabrication, designed to make me look like a monster and her like a saint. My phone buzzed with concerned calls from friends. "Trent, is everything okay? Vanna says you've been acting strange. We had no idea you had a gambling problem. If you need help, we're here for you." I let them talk, taking notes on who believed what, who asked follow-up questions, who seemed genuinely concerned versus who was just fishing for gossip. Small towns were fascinating ecosystems of information, and Vanna had just introduced a toxin into the water supply. But she'd made one crucial mistake. In her rush to destroy my reputation, she'd forgotten that I knew about Eliot. And unlike her carefully crafted lies about my character, I had photographs. That evening, I drove to Elite Fitness Club. The place was closing, most of the lights already off. I waited in the parking lot until Eliot emerged, gym bag slung over his shoulder, keys jingling in his hand. He was even prettier in person. The kind of manufactured attractiveness that came from expensive haircuts and professional teeth whitening. His car was a red Corvette, because of course it was. I got out of my truck and walked over to him. "Eliot Garrison?" He turned, immediately wary. "Yeah? I'm Trent Ardell, Vanna's husband." His face went through the same series of expressions Vanna's had that morning, but with an added layer of genuine fear. "Look, man, I don't know what she told you. She didn't tell me anything. She didn't have to." I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos. His shoulders sagged like a deflated balloon. "What do you want?" he asked. "Right now? Nothing. But my wife is spreading lies about me around town, trying to destroy my reputation so she can get her hands on my money." I put the phone away. "I thought you should know that I have evidence of your relationship, just in case things escalate." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm informing you. There's a difference." I started walking back to my truck, then turned around. "Oh, and Eliot? You might want to be more careful where you leave your membership cards. You never know who might find them." The war began in earnest the next morning. I woke up to find my truck's tires slashed and "loser" spray-painted across the windshield. Vanna was already gone, probably establishing an alibi at her office, but her handiwork was unmistakable. I called the police, filed a report, and took pictures. Then I called my insurance company and arranged for a rental car. By noon, I was mobile again and ready to respond. But first, I needed intelligence. Mrs. Blanchard lived next door and had the supernatural ability to know everything that happened within a 3-block radius. She was watering her flowers when I walked over, pretending to check my mailbox. "Terrible thing about your truck," she said, not looking up from her petunias. "Yeah, kids these days." "Wasn't kids." She finally met my eyes. "Was that fancy man who's been visiting your wife. Saw him clear as day around midnight sneaking around your driveway." "Fancy man. Drives that red sports car. Been coming around for months when you're at work. Sometimes stays real late." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Your wife gave him a key to the house." The key explained how he'd gotten into my garage to plant the membership card. It also explained how he'd gotten close enough to my truck to vandalize it without waking anyone. "Thanks, Mrs. Blanchard." "You're a good man, Trent. Don't let them convince you otherwise." I spent the afternoon at Frank's bar, nursing a beer and planning my next move. The lunch crowd was full of local gossips, and I could hear fragments of conversation about my gambling problem and Vanna's difficult situation. The poison was spreading exactly as she'd intended. "You look like you're plotting something," Frank said, refilling my glass. "Just thinking about the nature of evidence." "Evidence?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos of Vanna and Eliot. "She's trying to destroy my reputation with lies, but I have documentation of the truth." Frank whistled low. "That's some serious ammunition. The question is how to use it. She went public with her attack, so maybe it's time I responded in kind." "Careful, Trent. Once you pull that trigger, there's no going back." She pulled the trigger when she had my truck vandalized. That evening, I created a group text message with all our mutual friends, the same people who'd received Vanna's character assassination attempts. But instead of a long explanation or emotional appeal, I simply sent the photos with a short message. "Since everyone seems concerned about my marriage, I thought you should see what my wife has been doing during her late client meetings. The man is Eliot Garrison, owner of Elite Fitness Club. The photos were taken last Thursday night. Draw your own conclusions." The response was immediate and explosive. My phone buzzed with incoming calls and messages. Some people were shocked. Others claimed they'd suspected something. A few tried to defend Vanna or suggest the photos were misleading. But the damage was done. Her carefully constructed narrative about my gambling and controlling behavior crumbled in the face of photographic evidence. Within an hour, Vanna was calling me. "How dare you send those pictures?" she hissed. "How dare you vandalize my truck? I didn't—" "Mrs. Blanchard saw Eliot in our driveway last night. She's willing to testify to that if necessary." Silence on the other end of the line. "This is war now, isn't it?" she said finally. "You declared war when you tried to destroy my reputation with lies. I'm just fighting back with the truth." "The truth? You want the truth?" Her voice was rising, losing the controlled lawyer tone. "The truth is that you're a small, petty man who got lucky with a lottery ticket and thinks it makes him important. The truth is that Eliot gives me things you never could: attention, romance, passion. And a key to our house, apparently." Another silence. "I want you out," she said. "Tonight. It's my house, too. My name is on the lease. Then I'll leave." "Where will you go? Eliot's place?" "That's none of your business." "Actually, it is. See, I've been thinking about that disclosure clause in our prenup, the one that voids the entire agreement if either party engages in financial deception." I paused, letting that sink in. I wonder what Peterson would say if he knew his client was living a double life while planning to challenge a legal document based on the sanctity of marriage. I could hear her breathing on the other end, sharp and angry. "You bastard," she whispered. "I'm the bastard? I'm not the one with a secret boyfriend and a house key I didn't know about." She hung up. An hour later, I watched from my window as Vanna loaded suitcases into her BMW. She was moving fast, throwing things into boxes without her usual careful organization. Eliot's Corvette was parked across the street, and I could see him waiting behind the wheel. Before she left, Vanna came back inside one last time. I heard her in the kitchen, then the sound of breaking glass. When I went to investigate, I found our wedding photo smashed on the floor, the frame twisted, and the glass scattered across the tiles. On the refrigerator, held by a magnet, was a note. "This isn't over." I swept up the glass and threw the photo away. Then I called a locksmith and had all the locks changed. If Vanna wanted back in, she could knock like any other visitor. That night, alone in the house for the first time in 3 years, I sat at the kitchen table where this had all started and read through the prenup again. Every clause, every protection, every carefully worded limitation. Vanna had been so focused on protecting her assets that she'd created a legal fortress around mine. But the disclosure clause, the one I'd insisted on, was the real masterpiece. Financial deception voided the entire agreement. And what was adultery but the ultimate financial deception? She'd been investing her time, emotion, and physical presence in another relationship while claiming the legal and financial benefits of marriage to me. Peterson was going to have a very interesting conversation with his client. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Detective Rebecca Lorne stood on my doorstep, looking official in her pressed uniform and mirrored sunglasses. We'd gone to high school together, but she'd always been more focused on law enforcement than social connections. "Morning, Trent. Mind if I come in?" "Of course." I stepped aside, wondering what this was about. "Coffee?" "Thanks." She followed me to the kitchen, taking note of the missing wedding photo and the general emptiness where Vanna's belongings used to be. "Heard you and Vanna are having some difficulties." That's one way to put it. "Got a complaint this morning about harassment and stalking. Someone's been following Eliot Garrison, taking pictures, making threats." I poured 2 cups of coffee, keeping my expression neutral. "That's concerning. Any idea who?" Rebecca smiled slightly. "Come on, Trent. We both know it was you. Question is whether it was justified." I sat down across from her, meeting her eyes. "What did Eliot tell you exactly?" "Says you confronted him in a parking lot, showed him photos, made implied threats about escalating the situation." "I showed him photos of him and my wife together, photos I took from a public street, and I informed him that I had evidence of their relationship in case my wife continued spreading lies about me." I shrugged. Nothing illegal about any of that. "Technically, no, but Garrison seems pretty spooked." "Maybe he should have thought about that before he started sleeping with a married woman." Rebecca sipped her coffee, studying me over the rim. "You know I have to ask, where were you last night around midnight?" "Here, alone, changing the locks on my house after my wife moved out." "Can anyone verify that?" "The locksmith. Guy named Rodriguez from 24-hour security. I've got his receipt." She nodded, making a note. "Garrison's car was vandalized last night. Someone keyed cheater into the paint job." "Terrible thing. Vandalism is such a problem these days." "Trent." "Rebecca, I was here all night. I have an alibi. And frankly, after what he did to my truck, I'd say Eliot Garrison has bigger problems than scratched paint." Her eyebrows went up. "He vandalized your truck?" "According to Mrs. Blanchard, who saw him in my driveway around midnight 2 nights ago. Right before I discovered my tires were slashed and my windshield was spray painted." Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. "You filed a report on the truck?" "Of course. Got photos, insurance claim, the whole thing." "And Mrs. Blanchard will testify that she saw Garrison?" "If necessary." She finished her coffee and stood up. "Sounds like you've got everything documented." "I believe in being thorough. Just try to keep things legal, okay? Whatever's happening between you and Vanna, don't let it escalate into something that lands you in my jail." After she left, I called Frank. "Feel like taking a drive?" "Where to?" "Elite Fitness Club. I want to see how our friend Eliot is handling his vandalism problem." We found Eliot in the gym's parking lot, standing next to his Corvette and talking animatedly on his phone. The word cheater was carved deep into the red paint along the driver's side, impossible to miss or ignore. "Think he's calling his insurance company?" Frank asked. "Or his lawyer?" As we watched, a tow truck arrived. Eliot supervised as they loaded his car, then climbed into a taxi. The gym's parking lot was nearly empty. Apparently word was getting around about the owner's extracurricular activities. "Small towns," Frank observed, "news travels fast. Especially bad news." That afternoon, I received a call from Peterson, Vanna's lawyer. "Mr. Ardell, we need to discuss the situation." "Which situation? My wife's adultery or her campaign to destroy my reputation?" "I think we can resolve this amicably. Vanna is willing to drop any challenge to the prenup in exchange for your agreement to stop harassing Mr. Garrison." "I haven't harassed anyone. I documented my wife's infidelity and informed the other party that I had evidence. That's not harassment. That's transparency. The photos you distributed were taken from a public street and show my wife engaged in intimate behavior with another man. If she's embarrassed by that, maybe she shouldn't have done it." Peterson sighed. "What do you want, Trent?" "I want my wife to honor the prenup she insisted on. I want her to stop spreading lies about me. And I want her boyfriend to stay away from my property." "And in exchange?" "In exchange, I won't file adultery charges that would void the prenup entirely and entitle me to half of everything she owns." Long silence on the other end. "I'll discuss this with my client," Peterson said finally. "You do that. And Peterson, tell Vanna that Mrs. Blanchard has been very helpful. Neighbors see everything in a small town." That evening, Vanna called me directly. "You're destroying everything," she said without preamble. "I'm protecting myself from someone who was trying to destroy me." "Eliot had nothing to do with your truck. Mrs. Blanchard saw him in our driveway that night. She's prepared to testify to that. She's a crazy old woman who makes things up. She's a credible witness who's lived in this neighborhood for 30 years and knows everyone who belongs here and everyone who doesn't. This is insane, Trent. We used to love each other." "We did, past tense. Before you decided that love meant protecting your assets with a prenup and finding passion with a gym owner. I never meant for this to happen. You never meant to get caught." She was crying now, which might have affected me a week ago. Now it just sounded like another manipulation. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want you to honor the agreement you insisted on. I want you to stop trying to destroy my reputation, and I want you to accept that your choices have consequences." "And Eliot?" "Eliot made his choice when he started sleeping with a married woman. He can live with the consequences too." After she hung up, I sat in my empty house and thought about consequences. Vanna had wanted a prenup to protect her assets. She'd gotten exactly what she asked for, and discovered that protection worked both ways. Eliot had wanted the excitement of an affair with a married woman. He'd gotten that too, along with the public humiliation that came with being exposed. And me? I'd wanted a marriage based on love and trust. Instead, I'd gotten a legal document and a lottery ticket. Not what I'd planned, but I was learning to work with what I had. The call came at 6 a.m, jarring me awake from the first decent sleep I'd had in days. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. "Mr. Ardell, this is Janet Morrison from First National Bank. I'm calling about some unusual activity on your wife's accounts." I sat up, suddenly alert. "What kind of activity?" "I can't discuss specifics over the phone, but there are some transactions that require immediate attention. Can you come in today?" "I'll be there in an hour." Janet Morrison was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and the careful demeanor of someone who'd spent decades handling other people's money. She led me into a private office and closed the door. "Mr. Ardell, I need to ask you about a loan application filed last week." She slid a document across the desk. My signature was at the bottom, but I'd never seen the paperwork before in my life. "This isn't my signature," I said immediately. "Are you certain?" "Absolutely. I never applied for this loan." What's it for? Janet's expression grew troubled. $200,000 secured against your lottery winnings. The application lists you as the primary borrower and your wife as the co-signer with power of attorney. Power of attorney? I never gave her power of attorney. According to this document, you did. Last month. She showed me another paper with my forged signature. The implications hit me like a physical blow. While I'd been focused on the prenup and her affair, Vanna had been planning something much more devastating. Has the loan been approved? Not yet. That's why I called. The signatures looked inconsistent. And frankly, it's unusual for someone to borrow against lottery winnings so soon after receiving them. Because it's fraud. She forged my signature on both documents. Janet nodded slowly. I was afraid of that. What would you like me to do? I want to file a formal complaint, and I want copies of everything. Within an hour, I had a folder full of evidence that would destroy Vanna's legal career and probably land her in prison. The loan application, the power of attorney, even copies of emails between her and the loan officer discussing the best way to expedite the process. I called Peterson immediately. We need to meet, I said when he answered. Mr. Ardell, I've already told you, your client committed fraud, bank fraud, with forged signatures and false documents. Silence. I'll be right there, he said. Peterson's office was all mahogany and leather, designed to intimidate. But today, the lawyer looked like a man facing his own professional destruction. I spread the bank documents across his conference table and watched his face go pale. Where did you get these? He asked. The bank called me this morning. Seems your client tried to take out a $200,000 loan using forged signatures and fraudulent power of attorney documents. He studied the papers with the intensity of a man looking for a lifeline. These could be faked. Call the bank. Ask for Janet Morrison. She'll confirm everything. Peterson reached for his phone, then stopped. What do you want? I want your client to understand that she's crossed a line. This isn't about marriage problems or prenups anymore. This is about felony fraud. If I could arrange a meeting. No meetings, no negotiations. She committed a crime, and I have the evidence to prove it. I gathered up the documents and headed for the door. Mr. Ardell, Peterson called after me. What are you going to do? I'm going to let your client sweat for a while. Then I'm going to decide whether she deserves prison or just professional destruction. That afternoon, I drove to Elite Fitness Club. The parking lot was nearly empty, and a for lease sign had appeared in the window. Word traveled fast in a small town, and Eliot's reputation was apparently bad for business. I found him inside, packing equipment into boxes. He looked up when I entered, his face immediately wary. What do you want now? Just curious how business is going. He gestured around the empty gym. You got what you wanted. I'm finished. I didn't do this. Your customers did, when they found out what kind of man you really are. Right. Like you didn't plan this whole thing. I sat down on a weight bench, studying him. You really think I orchestrated your downfall? Didn't you? Eliot, I took some pictures and told the truth. Everything else, the vandalism, the lost customers, the business failure, that's just the natural consequence of your choices. He slammed a weight plate into a box. Easy for you to say? You've got $5 million. Money I earned by buying a lottery ticket. Money that's legally mine under a prenup your girlfriend insisted on. She loves me. Does she? Because she just tried to steal $200,000 from me using forged documents. That doesn't sound like someone who's planning a future with you. His hands stopped moving. What are you talking about? I pulled out copies of the loan documents and showed them to him. Your girlfriend tried to take out a loan against my lottery winnings, forged my signature, created fake power of attorney papers, the whole thing. Eliot stared at the papers, his face going through a familiar series of expressions. She said she was handling the legal side of things. She was, by committing felony fraud. But she said once the prenup was challenged, we'd have enough money to start over somewhere else. Start over with stolen money, you mean? He sank into a chair, looking suddenly much older. I didn't know. Didn't know, or didn't want to know. She said you were controlling, abusive, that you were keeping money that should belong to both of you. And you believed her because it was convenient, because it justified what you were doing. Eliot was quiet for a long time. What happens now? Now you decide what kind of man you want to be, the kind who helps a woman commit fraud, or the kind who tells the truth when it matters. I left him sitting in his empty gym, surrounded by the wreckage of his business and his illusions about Vanna. Whether he'd find the courage to do the right thing remained to be seen. That evening, Vanna called. We need to talk, she said. About what? Your little banking adventure? Long pause. I know you tried to steal $200,000 from me using forged documents. I know you committed multiple felonies while planning to run away with your boyfriend. And I know your boyfriend is starting to figure out what kind of person you really are. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're a thief, Vanna, a common criminal who got caught. I'm still your wife. Not for much longer, and when this gets out, and it will get out, you won't be a lawyer either. She started crying again, but this time it sounded genuine. The tears of someone who'd finally realized how completely she'd destroyed her own life. Please, Trent. We can work this out. No, we can't. You crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. I'll do anything. You'll face the consequences of your choices, just like everyone else. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet house and thought about justice. Vanna had wanted to protect her assets with a prenup. She'd wanted the excitement of an affair, and she'd wanted easy access to my lottery money. She'd gotten the prenup, which now protected my money from her. She'd gotten the affair, which had destroyed her reputation and her boyfriend's business. And she'd gotten caught trying to steal from me, which would probably end her career and her freedom. Sometimes the universe had a sense of humor, dark, twisted, and perfectly appropriate. The confrontation came on a Tuesday morning in the most public place possible, the courthouse steps during the weekly farmers market. Vanna had chosen the location deliberately, hoping the crowd would force me to be reasonable, civilized, forgiving. She was wrong. I was buying coffee from Frank's booth when I saw her approaching, flanked by Peterson and looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her usual perfect appearance was cracking, wrinkled clothes, smudged makeup, the desperate look of someone whose world was falling apart. "Trent," she called out, loud enough for half the market to hear. "We need to talk." I turned slowly, coffee in hand, taking my time. Around us, conversations quieted as people sensed drama brewing. "About what, Vanna?" "About us. About our marriage." She stepped closer, putting on a show of wounded vulnerability. "About forgiveness." "Forgiveness?" I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. "You want forgiveness for adultery and attempted fraud?" The word fraud rippled through the crowd like electricity. Peterson stepped forward, trying to control the damage. "Mr. Ardell, perhaps we could discuss this privately." "Why privately? Your client seems to enjoy public forums. She certainly enjoyed spreading lies about me to anyone who'd listen." Vanna's mask slipped, showing the anger underneath. "I never lied about anything." "No? What about the gambling problem I don't have? The controlling behavior that's actually me protecting my own assets? The abuse that consists of me documenting your affair?" More people were gathering now, drawn by the raised voices and the promise of small-town scandal. I recognized faces from the bar, the grocery store, the gas station. These were our neighbors, our community, and they were about to get an education in the real Vanna Heslor. "I made mistakes," Vanna said, trying to regain control of the narrative. "But marriage is about forgiveness, about working through problems together. Marriage is also about honesty, about fidelity, about not forging your spouse's signature on loan documents. Peterson grabbed her arm, trying to pull her away, but she shook him off. "You're destroying me," she hissed. "I'm not destroying anything. I'm just refusing to be destroyed by you. The money changed you, made you cruel. The money revealed you, showed me exactly what our marriage was worth to you." She was crying now, but it wasn't working. The crowd could see through the performance, could sense the manipulation underneath the tears. "I loved you," she said. "You loved my potential usefulness. The prenup proved that. The prenup was my parents' idea. The prenup was your insurance policy, protection from the blue-collar husband who might want a share of your family money, except it turned out to protect my money from you." Frank appeared beside me, coffee pot in hand, ready to provide backup if needed. Other faces in the crowd were nodding, remembering Vanna's character assassination campaign, her attempts to paint me as the villain. "What do you want?" Peterson asked desperately. "What will it take to resolve this?" "Resolution?" I looked around at the assembled crowd, then back at Vanna. "I want everyone to know the truth, the whole truth." I pulled out my phone and showed the screen to the nearest spectators. "These are photos of my wife, with Eliot Garrison, taken outside his gym during one of her client meetings. The same Eliot Garrison who vandalized my truck when I confronted him about the affair." The phone passed from hand to hand, the photos spreading through the crowd like wildfire, gasps, whispers, heads shaking in disapproval. "And this," I continued, pulling out the bank documents, "is evidence that my wife attempted to steal $200,000 from me using forged signatures and fraudulent power of attorney papers." Peterson lunged for the documents, but Frank blocked him. "Public information," Frank said calmly. "Man's got a right to defend himself." The crowd was turning now, the mood shifting from curiosity to outrage. These were hard-working people who understood the value of money and the importance of honesty. Vanna's crimes weren't just against me. They were against everything this community believed in. "You planned this," Vanna accused. "You wanted to humiliate me. I wanted to protect myself from a wife who was trying to destroy me financially and professionally while committing felonies behind my back. The loan was fraud, bank fraud, felony fraud, the kind that ends careers and starts prison sentences." She looked around at the hostile faces surrounding us, finally understanding that her reputation was beyond salvage. The tears stopped, replaced by cold calculation. "You'll never prove the signatures were forged," she said. "Actually, I will. The bank has handwriting experts, security cameras, electronic records. Your emails discussing how to expedite the process are particularly damaging." Peterson was pulling out his phone, probably calling for backup or an escape route. But it was too late. The damage was done, the truth was out, and the court of public opinion had rendered its verdict. "Mrs. Heslor," a voice called from the crowd. It was Detective Lorne, pushing through the spectators with official purpose. "I need to speak with you about some irregularities in your loan application at First National Bank." The color drained from Vanna's face. "I want my lawyer present." "That's your right. Mr. Peterson, I assume you'll be representing your client?" Peterson looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. "I'll need time to review the situation." "Of course, Mrs. Heslor, please don't leave town while we investigate this matter." As the crowd began to disperse, buzzing with excitement over the morning's drama, Vanna turned to me one last time. "I hope you're happy," she said. "I'm satisfied. There's a difference. This isn't over." "Yes, it is. Your career is finished, your reputation is destroyed, and your boyfriend's business is bankrupt. The prenup you insisted on protects my money from you, and the fraud you committed protects me from you forever." I finished my coffee and handed the empty cup to Frank. "It's over, Vanna. You just haven't accepted it yet." She walked away with Peterson, her shoulders straight but her step unsteady. Around us, The farmer's market resumed its normal rhythm, but I could hear fragments of conversation, my name mixed with words like fraud and affair and justice. Frank clapped me on the shoulder. Feel better? I feel like myself again, for the first time in 3 years. That afternoon, the story was all over town. By evening, it would be in the local newspaper. By tomorrow, everyone in the county would know about Vanna Hesslor's fall from grace. I went home to my quiet house, sat at the kitchen table where it all started, and read through the prenup one more time. Every clause, every protection, every carefully worded limitation that had seemed so unfair 3 years ago. Vanna had been right about one thing. The document was ironclad. It had protected her family money from me, and it was now protecting my lottery money from her. She'd insisted on separate assets, and she'd gotten exactly what she asked for. The clause I'd added about financial deception had voided the entire agreement, but that hardly mattered now. She'd have no claim to my money anyway, not after the criminal charges were filed. Justice, I reflected, sometimes came in unexpected forms. Vanna had crafted her own destruction with the same precision she'd once used to craft legal documents. Every choice, every lie, every crime had been a step toward this inevitable conclusion. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. Mr. Ardell, this is Channel 7 News. We'd like to interview you about the incident at the courthouse today. I smiled, thinking about Vanna's destroyed reputation, Eliot's failed business, and the $5 million sitting safely in my protected accounts. No comment, I said, and hung up. The story would tell itself. Truth had a way of doing that. Outside, Mrs. Blanchard was watering her flowers, probably preparing to share the day's events with anyone who'd listen. In a few hours, Frank's bar would be full of people discussing the morning's drama, dissecting every detail, adding their own theories and observations. Small towns were fascinating ecosystems of information, and today, the information flow was all going in my direction. I poured myself a whiskey, raised the glass in a silent toast to the prenup that had saved my fortune and the lottery ticket that had revealed my wife's true nature. Clause for war, I said to the empty house. Clause for peace. The war was over. I'd won. And unlike Vanna's fraudulent documents, that victory was ironclad, legally binding, and absolutely final.